Go live button.
The go live button is for YouTube.
Oh, right. Yeah, I watched that the other night. That actually came off pretty good.
Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly check that we are going live. Welcome to Perceptions Today. Yep. It is UK date 12th of July. It's 2022, Twitter Space Chat 42, Part 2, with returning guest Anthony Peake. And he's an author, researcher, discussing his new book, Cheating The Ferryman, and topics on consciousness. Remember, we are recording this for the Perceptions Today podcast and also streaming this live to YouTube. Keep this in mind and do not divulge any private information that you don't want out on the universe. Perceptions Today looks into consciousness topics in all different areas. I am your host, Paul, and your co-host is Ian D.W. Hawkins. Say hello, Ian.
Hello, everyone.
Upcoming events we will be coming to is in August 3rd at 7 p.m. is Les Scranton discussing interconnections to other domains of consciousness, which we're all looking forward to. Then again, on the 4th of August, Eileen Meyer is going to be talking about the visitors and third eye midwives. Both of these will be held in Zoom. Other events are in the works. To find out more, check in with the perceptionstoday.com website, which is all one word, for the events, mailing list, YouTube, Instagram, and much more. To help us reach more people who have questions and their experiences, and also researchers, etc., subscribe to the podcast and also the YouTube channels, Instagram, and also comment and tell people as much as possible. That way, it really does help us out. When it comes down to announcements, we'll tell you if there's any technical difficulties. Also, we'll tell you who's in the room that you should be following. If you've got specific areas of research, we think that you should know about them, like researchers, podcasters, artists, etc. I would also like to thank Anthony again for the belief in the concepts of this project, as he's a 5-time return guest, as well as being part of the community that actually pushed us going forwards with many other people. Anthony Peake has written 12 books and spoken around the world and has been on many podcasts to mention here. And it's my great pleasure to introduce to yourself, Anthony Peake.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second session today on my new book, Cheating the Ferryman. So I'm really looking forward to chatting, discussing ideas, answering questions if you have any, and just free associating really with just the way in which the mysteries of life, time, and everything else. That's what we're here to discuss.
Which is a great topic to go through, because many people are very much interested in your latest book. And again, as you know, there's at least 3 people that are in the room that have your latest book. And I've been going through it and finding it very fascinating as you've gone more in depth in, say, the first 30 pages of why you had that burning desire to do that. And have you found whether it's been resonating with other people once they've gone through that kind of introduction?
The response I've had has been absolutely phenomenal. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I gave the people opportunity to buy advanced copies before they were published officially. So in the UK, the publication date was the 30th of June, and for the USA, it will be the 31st of July. But I did manage to get advanced copies from my publishers. And I've sold out 3 times. I've just had to put another order in. And I think somewhere in the region of 350 copies have been sold.
That's a fantastic number.
I've spent most of my time just packing up books and sending them down to our local post office. They know me now there. You know, it's a running joke when I walk in with my bag full of books. But the response of the people that have read it has been absolutely extraordinary, I have to say. And what's really good is, for the first time ever, the book has come out it's out in Kindle, it's out in paperback, and it's out in Audible as well. So we've managed to get all 3 types of book out at the same time. And it's the Audible book that is selling phenomenally in the UK. It got up to number 15 in at least 3 different categories on Amazon bestseller lists a few days ago, which in itself is extraordinary because it's an Audible book. So, you know, all the other books around were normal paperbacks or Kindle books But this
And
was
where
an
have they
audible book.
thrown you as a category now? Because I know sometimes in your first few books, they've put you in a category that you didn't really want to be into. So with the fact that you've escalated up the charts now, where have they put you?
Well, I'd say it's still kind of frustrating in the sense that the charts that I'm charting is reincarnation, parapsychology, and there's another occult or something, and that's always been the ongoing problem I've got. And it's one of the things that has jarred with me over the years, because what happens is my book gets into normal bookshops, so there's never been a problem with that, and my publishers are always very good at doing that, but they always place me in new age books, and it should be in popular science. So what is happening is the people that peruse books in new age section are buying the book, and the science is throwing them because they're expecting books, it happened to me and everything else, which is good, but I don't do that. I very much do the science, and it's hard science. So a lot of people find it difficult to read, whereas the people who really would appreciate the science don't ever want to be seen in a new age section of a bookshop, which means that I'm not getting particularly to my target audience, which is a frustration. And I did say to my publisher, because as you guys will probably know, I have 4 different publishers. But this particular publisher, Arcturus, who are the guys that gave me my first break, and I said, I really need the book to get under the noses of the people who really appreciate the way in which I'm linking things like the Unhuru effect with the holographic universe argument, with the writings of quantum physicists, and it's still not really getting to them, because the amount of times over the years that I've had scientists approach me saying, I picked up your book by accident, and it stunned me. I mean, for instance, one of the examples here was when the first book came out, it was picked up by accident for a professor of neurology at one of the universities in New York. And he messaged me and he said, you taught me things about neurology that I wasn't aware of, purely and simply because I've been down a certain funnel of logic. And you're pointing out things that I'd never thought about. And I'm going, yeah, he's right. He's joining dots that other people aren't joining. So it really is important that you guys help me as best you can. Try and get this book out there in the way that it breaks through the glass ceiling.
It's also fascinating. Sorry to interrupt there. I thought there was a pause. That it's a semi kind of class mentality or a category that you shouldn't go and look elsewhere to bring information in. And again, we said it many times that if you're going to have a conversation with somebody that you don't understand where they're coming from, you've got to go and investigate what they're learning or talking about so that you got some kind of frame of reference. You just can't come with your point B to point A, but you don't know anything about A. You got to kind of drop that and go in there with an unbiased kind of approach to it all. So it's quite interesting that you've got this concept, not you, but I mean, some of the people are, I won't go to that actual side of a bookshop because it might affect how people see me. When you can peruse anything, really, you should do.
And what's really annoying for me is the amount of times, because as you guys know, I engage with everybody. So anybody, and I engage widely on Facebook. And the amount of times that people will turn around to me and say, I don't need to read your books to know you're a charlatan. And I don't need to read your books in order to know that you talk a load of rubbish. And I say, but how can you say that if you haven't invested the time in reading my work? How can you decide that it's nonsense? I'll cite an example of this, just how difficult it can be sometimes. I was in New York around about 12 years ago, and I was invited to speak for a group, and they hired, or one lady actually, one of my fans over there, hired the ballroom in the Roosevelt Hotel in Madison Avenue. And we had about 300 people in the audience. I mean, it was amazing. She paid the whole thing. She paid for me to fly over. She paid for a friend of mine to come over with me as well, who was the master of ceremonies. She fed 300 people, hired the room. And this is the room, by the way, where the American Democratic Party, they announced their candidature for the presidency.
But wasn't it Wolf Street as well?
And it was Wall Street. It was the greed is good speech. I was on that podium where Michael Douglas does the greed is good speech. And when I was up there, I was thinking, my God, it's like being in a movie. But the interesting thing is that halfway through the talk, some guy stood up in the middle of the audience, halfway through, and said, I'm going to compromise you now. I believe you're a charlatan. I don't believe you know what you're talking about. And he said, I think it's just a matter of you write it and research it. And he said, so I'm going to put you on the spot now. He said, because I'm a professor of quantum physics from Princeton. And he turned around and he said, so I want you now in front of all these people, off the top of your head, to explain Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So I did. And he stopped and he looked at the bond. And they don't then engage again. They just run away. And that's so frustrating, because if they have issues with my work, as I said on the earlier on today, I have no problem with that. If I've got the wrong end of the stick on some scientific concept, I'm not a trained scientist. I'm an enthusiastic amateur. So if I've got something wrong, I want to be corrected, you know, and they won't do that. You know, it is very, very weird and very, very frustrating. Why that is, why people just suddenly put you in a category. You know, it's but it's one of those things, really. I guess everybody in the group here has, at one time or another, have had those circumstances come about. You know, particularly you guys that have had extraordinary experiences like Myron. You know,
talking of that, he's got his hand up already, which is great. And also, hi Jeffrey, nice to see you. Come in. Ah, now I heard the cat, and the cat's yours. I know this.
Yeah, the cat definitely. It's not a dog. So walking my cat named dog.
It's like a boy named Sue.
Yeah, right. Well, you know that's interesting. There's a parallel here. You know that when I talk about my visions, depending on who's in the audience, let's say it's filled with neurologists, doctors, and patients and family members and all kinds of stuff.
Can I just ask you to get a little closer to the mic? It's a bit quiet because I don't want to miss the information that you're about to give. Thank you.
So anyway, you know, when I'm talking, two things happen. One, I get put in the category of an artist who's just making this up. And so there's that. And then the second one is I know so much about neurology and about how my brain works that when the neurologists come up, when I used to be on the board years ago of the Epilepsy Foundation and here in New York, you know, those are the biggest neurologists in the world. And none of them could come up with an explanation on how I could do what I do, how these visions work and all that kind of stuff. So, okay. So they put me either in he's a patient category and he has epilepsy, or he's an artist and this is just art based on his own imagination, or they accept the fact that what's written in that book that you read that's on my website, they accept that as reality. And so you got, like you've got three kinds of perceptions on how people deal with you. They either think that you're lying, you know, that you're just making these stories up, or two, people are so moved that they start crying. And that's happened to me many, many times. And then other people are moved just by the art or a combination thereof. So I just wanted to talk about the parallel there, because like when my art is shown, the first they used to say he's an epileptic artist, blah blah blah. Well, they don't say that anymore because I've been so successful that they just say that this is artist Myron Dial, and like I was telling you about the LACMA thing. they're not going to just say, well, he's just an epileptic artist anymore. They've eliminated that category when they talk about my art because it's been so successful. However, there are still people who don't buy the story. They don't buy it. There are neurologists that don't buy it. And interestingly enough, I knew some things about neurology that they didn't know because I experienced it. And they hadn't, they don't experience it. They just go on research. Well, that's great, except they didn't get it. They didn't understand that these things were actually occurring inside of patients. And when I was on the board, I used to point those things out to them. So I wanted to draw that parallel just to
I think that's a really excellent one, and one worth pursuing, I think, particularly in this term. I'm always very careful when, because I have lots of associates who experience epilepsy in one way or another. And it's the idea, isn't it, that you live in a perceptual world that is facilitated by your experience of epilepsy, which makes you see a world that is qualitatively different to the world experienced by, for want of a better term, neurotypicals. And the whole thing is, it comes down to the fact that we can only react to what our senses tell us is external reality. And if you don't have those experiences, you can't describe them. It's like trying to explain, I don't know, sexual attraction to a child. It's something you cannot explain until you've experienced it yourself. And in many ways, this reminds me again, of the concept of Plato's cave and the concept of the escaped prisoner who manages to get away from the cave and manages to get away from the shadows on the wall, goes to the end of the cave, sees reality as it really is, comes back and tells his friends who have been staring at the shadows on the wall for all their lives, and says, this is not the way it is, there's more to it. And of course, they categorize that person as being crazy or mad or whatever, whereas that's a very, very subjective statement to make, because I know from associates of mine that experience temporal lobe epilepsy that they are extraordinary. And I'll give one example because I always love this example. There's, rather like you, Myron, there's a friend of mine called Jane, and Jane had severe epilepsy, and she ended up having parts of her brain cut out in order to stop the epilepsy. She's a nurse as well. And while she was doing this, one of the tests she did the WADA test, where they inject sodium amytal into the carotid artery, which deadens the dominant hemisphere. And
right.
when she said this happened, she immediately sensed somebody else inside her head. The second it happened, she told me she realized that there were two of her. There was her everyday consciousness, and there was this other entity that was her that wasn't. So she sensed her daemon. But what I found really intriguing about Jane was that we'd arranged to meet in a bookshop in the outskirts of Liverpool, the city, my nearby city, a few years ago. And I was doing a business contract, and there was a shopping centre nearby, near Peake Airport, near Liverpool. And inside the shopping centre, there was a Borders bookshop. And the Borders bookshop was very interesting because it had a mezzanine floor at the back. So you had the front of the shop with all the bookshops, all of the bookshelves and everything. Then there was a set of stairs, and at the back there was a Costa's Coffee, and it overlooked the front of the shop. Now, because Jane had experienced intractable epilepsy, she couldn't drive. So when she turned up, she explained to me that she'd got the bus into the centre of Liverpool, then got another bus, left her son and his friend in the centre of Liverpool, and then had got the bus out the 6 miles out to meet me at the bookshop. So we're sitting in the mezzanine floor, and she's explaining this to me. And as she's explaining it to me, she has an absence seizure. So she stops talking to me, and she just stares at me. And I realized she was having a petit malabsence. So I thought, don't worry, she'll be okay. And she stares at me. Then her head turns, and she looks over the mezzanine floor at the entrance to the shop. And she turns around and she says, he shouldn't be here. Why is he here? He's too early. He shouldn't be here. And then she comes to. And I'm just about to say to her, you've just had an absence seizure. When she looked over the top of the mezzanine floor, her son walked in through the front door of the shop, and she said, he shouldn't be here. Why should he be here? He's too early. She repeated exactly the words that she said previously. Now, that was the first time I'd ever seen absolute evidence of precognition during an absent state. Now, to me, people can turn around to me and they can tell me all kinds of things. I witnessed that. I know that happened. And the reason she contacted me was she has precognitive deja vu states. And that was the reason she contacted me in the first place. And there she was in an absent state, having a precognitive thing. And I know, Myron, from your experiences, you have similar things. So there's something incredibly curious. And I argue that temporal lobe epilepsy, and the experience of temporal lobe epilepsy, kind of opens the doors of perception wider than us neurotypicals. And it opens a much broader, wider world, which, of course, reading your book, it's what you've experienced all your life, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting that in your book, Opening the Doors of Perception, you were one of the first people that I have met that actually talked about SLPE. And
Can
believe
you just
me,
tell people what SLEP is?
it's a kind of schizophrenia, but it's not schizophrenia like what you think of as schizophrenia. It's just a combination of the TLE experience with a larger opening of the brain. That's the easiest way I can put it.
Yeah, just to jump in here. So what we're talking about here is, in Opening the Doors of Perception, I presented what I called the Huxleyan spectrum. And the Huxleyan spectrum is a continuum that runs from what I get, which is classic migraine, into temporal lobe epilepsy, because classic migraine and temporal lobe epilepsy, there are overlap areas. Then you get TLE, and then at the extremes of TLE, you get the overlap into schizoform behavior, not schizophrenia as such, but schizoform. And
Right.
that's where Myron sits. And then you carry on from there. And all I'm arguing is that the doors get more and more open as you carry along, till the point of when somebody is experiencing schizophrenic episodes, the doors are so wide open that everything about the world, they're seeing the world as it really is. They're seeing the world as a holographic projection. Now, within this structure, then again, I then pull into here autism, Alzheimer's, and Gershwin syndrome and everything else as well. Because if you read up about,
I'm not sure many people will know what Gershwin syndrome is, so it'd be worthwhile just a quick summarization. Thank you.
It's kind of hyper intelligence. It's kind of seeing links where other people don't see links. It's like super autism.
Is that also pulling in religiosity as well and things like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're spot on there, Paul, because on top of this, there is this hyper religiosity that takes place because symbolism becomes important. And again, the first time I came across this was in the great book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, by Oliver Sacks.
Oliver Sacks, yeah, right.
And remember, there's that section of the young lad who has TLE, but also has the religioform type, and he sees links like Dostoevsky. You look at the writings of Dostoevsky, you can see that he has this kind of great religious interest. And I'd argue that many great religious leaders, their doors of perception are so open that they have this perception areas. And to me, for instance, there's an argument called, I think it's called the crowded world syndrome, that young people who have autism, they hear things much louder, the colors are more startling. It's if everything's wound up to a super extent, and they perceive the world in a completely different way. But it is all perception is perception, isn't it, Myron? But can you just go on about you were on? I jumped in there, but thank you for that. But can you tell more about the overlap areas you experience?
Yeah, sure. It's when you come to it as young as I did after I was in that coma, and then you immediately see this other part of yourself, or this other being, whichever way you want to put it, standing in the room, and you don't recognize anybody else, but you recognize this this undifferentiated part of yourself, which is Charon in my case. It's a shocking realization, but it's very calming. And Jung talked about the companion, and he was very emphatic about it. In more than one book, he talks about the undifferentiated part of your consciousness that is stronger than you are, than your ego is, and it comes to your aid, and he calls it the companion. And he wrote like 2 or 3 chapters on that. And that wasn't even about TLE. That was just about experiencing your higher self that is stronger than your weaker self, and then having a Heros Gammas between those two, and joining those two together and becoming one person, your strong side and your weak side, kind of a Tai Chi, and putting those two together. Well, in my case, there was Charon on one side and Myron Dial on the other side. And there's a lot more about that, but I don't have time to go into that. But anyway, the point is that right from the very beginning, that was age 4 when I started this, I was seeing hallucinations, if you want to call them that, and I don't even like that word because it's a useless term.
It is, yeah.
It means
What
nothing.
kind of one would you try to utilize then that would be the closest thing for people to use, do you reckon?
I would, if I was
non-ordinary perceptions.
Yeah, not non-ordinary, not the kind of thing that the ordinary person sees. Unless they're on DMT or they're on ayahuasca or they're on, some other mind-altering drug.
Yeah, it's the argument is that you're perceiving the wider perceptual field. Because I was quite interested, Myron, just jumping in there, with Jung, and his daemon, for want of a better time, like yours is Charon, was Philemon.
Yeah.
And he wrote about Philemon quite regularly. And it just seems that as you say, the term hallucination, the very last book that Oliver Sacks wrote was called Hallucinations. And in that book, he says quite categorically, nobody knows what hallucinations are. It's a category. It's literally a term we use to box in things we don't understand, isn't it? It's a label, nothing more. In my books, I talk about this labeling theory of science. You don't understand something, you give it a term. So for argument's sake, you turn around and say, I have idiopathic epilepsy, and everybody goes around going, oh my God, I've got idiopathic. Idiopathic means we don't know what it is, isn't it? That's what it means. We don't know the cause of it.
Just in my lifetime, they have discovered, because they've actually ignored it. I call it the black cat syndrome. Mm-hmm. They've ignored it. The scientists have ignored epilepsy for centuries, except in certain cultures, because of the stigma from the Bible and the Christian iconography and all the rest of it. So it wasn't studied very, very much until the 20th century, and I mean late in the 20th century, like from 1950 on. They started looking into it, but it wasn't until the 1960s and 70s and 80s that they started connecting it with, like, Jim Abrams and the ketogenic diet and all that kind of stuff, and with ketosis and body chemistry and all of the other aspects of the human being that are associated with consciousness. I remember reading about some Aborigines that could signal their brother 20 miles away by just sending them a signal, and their part of their body would move. And that sounds very familiar, like what Einstein was talking about when he was talking about particles signaling each other right across space-time, and he called that spooky. And so it may be spooky, but the fact is that it exists. And if I can access other realities other than this one, or the one we know of, so why shouldn't I do that? And why shouldn't I talk about it? I mean, if I'm a shaman then I'm a shaman. That's it. And there's no requirement for me to live in the jungle
No.
to have shamanistic experiences. You know, it's just nonsense. Well, the same thing's true with science, and people like you have advanced the research, which is now there's a whole UCLA center that does nothing but study epilepsy. That's all it does. And in fact, it was the head doctor there who doesn't see patients who diagnosed mine. And that was when I was 50. So so work like when you like I showed my therapist your statement about the schizophrenic part of the joining of the two consciousnesses. And you know, she said, "Oh no, that's just not true. That's just not true. That's not true." And so I told her, "Why don't you look up the research? Because it's there." And then I read that thing that you wrote in your book, and I read it to her. I said, "Just look this up. I'm sure you'll find it there." And it's amazing. These people, these psychiatrists and psychologists are treating people who have altered states of consciousness without understanding anything about them. You know, I remember telling my therapist, you know, if we're going to work together, the first thing you have to do is read my book. If you don't read my book, we're not going to work together. So she read the book. And then I said, now I don't want your opinion on anything to do with Charon or any of my experiences. I'm not interested in your opinion. She said, well, then what are you interested in? I said, I have personal problems with business and things like that, and subordinates and things. Those are the things I'm going to talk about. But I'm not here to talk to you about metaphysics or about my hallucinations or any of the rest or any of it, because the doctors didn't know anything about it.
Well, it's the thing, isn't it? It's the central concept of psychiatry. You know, that psychiatry, when it comes down to it, is it's not like proper medicine. It's not as if, you know, you can test these things. There is kind of definitions of certain psychiatric states which end up in this big book, don't they? And they say, okay, we'll go to the big book and this person's doing this, and this, so therefore they have that. Now, I took the opportunity a few years ago. I wrote a book on near-death experiences with Dr. Mahendra Pereira, who's a consultant psychiatrist, and another consultant psychiatrist, but two Australian consultant psychiatrists. And Mahendra was very interested in my angle on schizophrenia. And he put me in contact with Professor Alec Jenner, who he's no longer alive, but one of the world's leading authorities on schizophrenia. And I had a long chat with Alex about this. And the first thing I asked him, and I said, so what exactly is schizophrenia? And he said, I've spent 40 years of my life studying it, and I have no idea. He said he had no idea. So what they do is they compartmentalize things. Now, again, your point, I think, is a fascinating one about who was researching schizophrenia and epilepsy over the years. And, you know, John Hewlings Jackson was one of the main guys that opened up this idea. And he had one of his patients was a young doctor. And in my first book, I cite a lot of the Hewlings Jackson cases. And again, there was time dilation going on with this guy that he was having. His time was all over the place. Now, again, there is a friend of mine who is a graduate engineer, Cambridge University graduate engineer, very successful business guy, Ed, and his son has TLE and schizophrenia. And Ed and I used to discuss it a lot about his son, and we came to the conclusion that he was living in this timeless state. His life, he was 18 years old, then he was 35, then he was 20. All through his life, it was as if he was experienced the whole of his life from one location. Now, again, if you're in that world, that perceptual world, how do you ever explain to neurotypicals the things you're seeing? And if they have not experienced them, how dare they say that they're just hallucinations? It's arrogance. And it's missing a big trick, isn't it? By listening to you guys. Anybody that has altered states of consciousness, it's so important, isn't it?
I worked with
most definitely.
I worked with Oliver Sacks at the end of his life, for about, I think we had like 4 sessions, that he was
Wow.
very interested in the altered realities that I had, because he'd had altered realities when he was a student at UCLA, but he was taking, drugs for that. And and I told him, I said, I can actually go out of body, and I can see myself walking the streets of my old neighborhood at any age I want, all at the same time. So on one, I'm seeing myself deliver papers when I'm 11. I'm seeing myself walking down to the drugstore to get my horror comics. I see myself driving the car towards my girlfriend. I'm seeing all of that at the simultaneously, and there's no contradiction or anything. Now, none of these things connect. I mean, they don't. The 11-year-old doesn't talk to the 20-year-old, and the 20-year-old doesn't talk to the 40-year-old, and all of that sort of thing. But I can see them all out of body, all at the same time, and
Wow.
they know things that come to pass, and that's that surprised me, if you want to know the truth. The precognition part of it always surprised me, because I have witnesses, by the way. I'm not making this up. I actually have witnesses that I had told what was going to occur on that day, because I had a precognition of it in a vision. And sure enough, down to every detail, what I told her at breakfast happened 2 hours later.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's corroboration. All right. That's
Mm-hmm.
not me just making something up. And the real question is, why? Why
Yeah.
am I getting the precognition in the first place? That's the real important question. It isn't that you have it, it's why do you have it? So I would like your ideas on that.
Before
Yeah.
you get there, I just want to say welcome to Amber, and also the Blue Collar Enlightenment podcast, JC, and also Adrian and Julius and the rest of the people. Any books that are being mentioned or video quality information, I'm putting up into the shared section above so that we've got it, as well as also being put into live broadcast on YouTube. And again, if you're looking on YouTube, it'd be really great if you could subscribe and also leave a comment there saying I've commented, and then we'll get back to you and reply to you, because that way we can actually get some contact. We could possibly get some information from yourself and help educate us on these topics that we're discussing, because as you've been listening and you're showing interest out there, and again, Tim Bragg is out there in YouTube, and lucky enough he made an actual account today in Twitter, so I'm not sure if he's coming across, but it's nice to see people doing that. So that was just a quick public service announcement, and back to yourself, Anthony.
Okay. Hi, Tim. Really, really great that you're linking in here. It's really great to see you here. Excellent question. Well, firstly, an excellent review. I would say that Myron Dial is probably the classic proof of my Cheating the Ferryman hypothesis on so many levels. And I am so delighted that Myron has been involved in my work now for 15, 16 years.
Oh,
and
really?
Go on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it's just been wonderful, because you've helped me bring together my ideas and thoughts and hone my ideas and thoughts based upon your experiences. And one of your experiences that you've mentioned to me on various occasions was the time that you saw your own future self in the studio.
Right.
And would you just explain that set? Because it's better coming from you, because it looks like I'm putting words in your mouth. But if you can just explain that, and then I'll explain what I would analyze was taking place there.
Okay, what happened was I was sitting in my now famous red chair, and I was meditating, and I saw a man sitting at a table, kind of like, I saw a man sitting at the table and with his back to me, kind of like in Space Odyssey, that kind of thing. And
that's a good analogy. That's a really good visual cue. If anybody's seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, brilliant. Thank you.
And around him were paintings and drawings on the walls. I mean, they were everywhere. And he was working in a journal, these black journals that I work in that are 11 by 14. And I do most of my charcoal stuff in journals. So he was working on it, but I couldn't see his face. I could just see his back. And so I sort of walked into the space of where he was sitting and working. And even he kind of turned around, and just for a moment, I saw his face, and he was old, and he was kind of like what my age is now. I'm almost 80, so he was old, and the work had been almost completed. In fact, he even said to me, "The work is almost done," and that's all he said. And then I sort of came out of it. But at that time, I wasn't doing any art. I was a musician at that time. I was just playing music. And that's a big subject we need to talk about too, because I talked to Oliver about that. And so I said to Karen, yeah, I had this vision of myself in the future as an old man sitting in a room full of art, but I don't do art. So is that just something that my unconscious made up, or what is that? And she said, no, absolutely, that's your destiny. That's your you saw your own future there. And then she made the statement that I never put in the book, that is already done. Everything you saw has already happened. It's already been completed. You've already done all the work. You've been given a gift to be able to see the future that's already been done, and is continuously done. It's continuously operated and expanded. So anyway, so then after many years, I was sitting in my room. I'd forgotten all about it, except the fact that I put it in my book, and but I'd forgotten all about it. And I was sitting in my room one day, and I noticed, wow, the room's full of drawings and paintings, just like in that vision of 30 years ago. And I'm the age now that I was then. And so it was a precognition, but what it was, later on, Karen told me, it was the preparation for the change that was going to come. I was going to lose music because of the military. And even though I have degrees in music, I wasn't going to be able to play anymore because of injuries I was going to get in the military. But I didn't know that. And all of it was going to all that energy was going to be transferred to visual mediums. And I didn't know how to draw. I didn't know how to do anything. I never took an art lesson ever. And all of a sudden I could do it. And because Karen told me, like she always does, go buy a book, go buy a journal, 11 by 14, and start drawing. And that's what I did. I do what I'm told, so I did it. And I worked on it and expanded, and it was very rapid. My ability to draw just quadrupled month to month. And within a year, I was already caught up with being able to transfer to paper almost anything that I could see in a vision. And then later on, there was this obsession with color. Like, I have synesthesia, and when I hear B flat, I see blue. So if you look at my paintings, you'll see blue all over the place because of the synesthesia that I have. And I didn't even know that. I didn't even know synesthesia existed. It's so much stuff that goes on in the unconscious of human beings that no one knows anything about. And then
I mean, just to add to that, Myron, if we're very lucky today, tomorrow from 400 Drums, who's got at least 4 classic symptoms of synesthesia all tied together might be coming in. Amber knows her as well. And when we've had conversations, it's really expanded out amazingly well to give content. And also, just quickly, because you know Tim Bragg out there, Anthony, he's saying this, which is good. Excellent about the actual conversation and listening to you both. And also, he's been reading your book today, and he's been really enjoying the conversation out there. So I just thought I'd let you know, because obviously we can't bring comments straight through to Twitter Space.
Wonderful to hear that.
Anyway, that's the story.
Well, this is why it's so extraordinary here. In that, I'll just explain a little bit here. There is an Eastern concept called the linga surya, which is the long body. And the idea is that if you imagine the critical fusion facility of the human eye, how we perceive movement, I think it's 24 images to the second, and it's rather and it's rather like a cartoon, and that's how we see movement. So that all the time the retina at the back of the eye is washing itself, and it's taking images at 24 per second. Now that's how we perceive movement, and that's how we perceive, again, as I said in earlier on today in the other talk, when I said about electromagnetic chauvinism, I also believe that there's electromagnetic chauvinism in the sense of how we think reality is perceived in terms of temporal flow. So imagine a scenario that you put a time-lapse camera at Grand Central Station in rush hour, and you put you leave the exposure of the camera open for 10 minutes. So what would be individual people walking around Grand Central Station, if with an exposure of 10 or 15 minutes, will just be a mass of protoplasm, all melded into each other, going through each other and everything. But there's no preferred. 24 images per second is not a special preferred position in terms of reality. Rather, like 1 image every 10 minutes is not a preferred level. So let's extrapolate from that and imagine a creature that's the critical fusion facility is a year. Now, in which case, if that was the case, the planet Earth would be like a torus going round the sun, or more like an extended spring, because of course the sun itself is moving towards Alpha Centauri. So the Earth would be this kind of spring going round, and on that spring, to around about 10 foot, maybe 15 foot above the ground, would just be this massive protoplasm, wouldn't it? So all the trees, all the animals, all the cars, everything would just be enfolded in itself. Now imagine then somebody just viewing your life from the moment you were born and to the moment you died. So the critical fusion facility of 70, 80 years. What would you look like to that person? You'd look like this long worm-like creature that winds its way round through 3-dimensional space.
They showed that in Johnny Darko.
They do, don't they? Yes.
With the water.
Yeah, they do.
Right. So just to carry on then. So imagine this, it gets smaller, gets bigger and bigger, then gets smaller and smaller. Okay. So that's the linga surya, the long body. Now, we are literally like a loaf of bread. We are cuts in that loaf of bread, in that linga surya. So if you did a section of cuts of that, it would be almost like the walking man that used to be on the old grey whistle test, like a cartoon when you do a flick, when you say draw pictures on the edge of a book, so you have movement. Now, again, this is a very important concept, because this is the concept that a guy called Julian Barber in his book, The End of Time, writes about. And again, I cite Barber in the new book, together with his latest book. He's a physicist that argues that time is an illusion, that in fact, it's a continual present. Now, let's go back to what Philip K. Dick argued about orthogonal time. Orthogonal time is a time that runs at right angles to every second of this time. So it means that at any section, you are existing in this permanent present. Now, on top of that, again, in a book I wrote a few years ago on J.B. Priestley, in J.B. Priestley's play, Time and the Conways, there is a speech at the end of Act 2 by a character called Alan Conway. And he says exactly what I've just been saying. He turns around and he says, we are all of our lives. We are all moments in our lives. Every single moment in our life is alive now as it was when it happened. And I did a talk at the National Theatre in London before a performance of Time and the Conways about 12 years ago. And what was really wonderful about this performance was they got this idea across, and it was quite wonderful. What they did was they had the central character, Kay Conway, and she was leaning against a wall. And what they did was they had a group of actresses all dressed in exactly the same way as the main actress was, standing behind her in slightly different positions. And then they placed a strobe light on them. Now, none of them were moving. They were all standing completely still. But as they strobe lit it, you had the illusion of movement as she moved. It was uncannily well done. And again, it was getting across this idea of the long body. Now, going back, Myron, what I would argue is that individuals like yourself and people like my friend's son, you can see along the long body. You can attune to your consciousness in the future and your consciousness in the past. And if we exist in a timeless present, individuals like yourself can move out of that time and move into different times and perceive different times and see yourself in the future and the past. Now, again, I would argue that that part of you that can do that is your daemon, Charon, Philemon. And because the daemon sees all of your lives, it can move around. And it can see your future. It knows your future because from the daemon's point of view, it's already happened. It's history and it's the future.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
While you're going through that, Julius has got his hand up. Hopefully I've read that correctly. I know that you said to jump in when we see questions so we don't go too far off the point.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's Jules, actually.
Hi. I just wanted to, I'm a nurse, so I've had quite a lot of experience at sort of some of these strange experiences, and I'm very interested in something called the Global Consciousness Project. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but it's quite a well-known random number generator system that has peaked at certain moments in the last, I think it's been running about 25 years roughly. So in the last 25 years, there's been peaks in the synchronicity between the random number generators that are dotted all over the world, that show that there is a possibility for some kind of global consciousness that we are all tapped into. And when something happens that a lot of focus is put on, like 9/11 or the tsunami, and I think it was 2003 or 4, then these random number generators start to synchronize. They're tapping into something. And I was wondering what people think about this precognition and this seeing things before they happen, is whether it is some kind of, I mean, I was talking in a space a couple of weeks ago where I was talking with a couple of other nurses, and obviously we've just gone through the pandemic and we've been working on wards and unfortunately seeing people pass away, but there is a inbuilt ability with a lot of health professionals to know the outcomes of treatments or the outcomes of I mean, unfortunately, when somebody's going to pass away, a number of hours before it actually happens. And we were discussing whether it is some kind of ability to tap into this global consciousness and have a feeling, or whether it's just that we're more experienced at dealing with similar situations and we've based our opinion on that.
Just a quick one on that one. Yes, I do. And also, I've had multiple accidents over the years. And when it's happening, I've had split kind of pathways that have appeared in my mind of what the worst case scenario is to the best case scenario. So that kind of works on the precognition kind of routine.
You know, you were talking about the frame rate of the human eye.
Yeah, 24.
And the brain's ability to process it at about 25 frames a second. As someone that's working as a health professional, you know, I've obviously got quite a lot of insight into how the brain works, how it processes images, how the eye works and the amount of time it takes to get from seeing something to it being processed by your brain.
Well, glad you mentioned that. I got something to tell you about that today. Carry on.
The frame rate is pretty constant. It is around about 25 frames a second. It's very hard to compare the human brain to something digital or mechanical. But what the brain actually does with images is it fills in the gaps, and that can sometimes be where if you're in something like a car accident or everything seems to go in slow motion because it's happening so quickly, the brain can't fill in the gaps as quickly, and it's sort of like it's happening in slow motion.
Just to fill onto that one, today I was reading a Big Think article about, in Spain, they took 7 people and they were showing them 1,600 images, and they were showing them to map the pathways in the brain using an MRI to see how recognition works. So they were showing at 48 milliseconds, and the brain could actually identify inanimate to animate objects. When it got down to 35 milliseconds, you kind of had a clue, but you weren't too sure. But they found that the pathway still lit up at 25 milliseconds, that your brain was making the right assumptions about whether it's inanimate or animate.
There is also some similar research that shows that people can guess or preempt what is coming next. If you actually look on some of the research, there's been research done by some top researchers in sort of brain and eye work where they've done similar studies. They've had people, it's sort of been a black or white study where they've had to decide whether it was going to be black or white on the screen. That was going to be, I don't know whether it's 2 or 3 different options, but the people could actually press the button a split second before the image came up and know what it was going to be before it actually got there.
Oh, definitely. And Anthony's mentioned before that there are tests which he's talked about where you're sitting and you could either have a pleasant image or there's a very few amount of, not horrific images, but they're ones which they could cause you distress. And people were reacting, was it fractions of seconds before, Anthony, to the actual, before they even saw the distress bit? They weren't knowing there was a sequence coming up, but they just got that switch in their body.
I think I've actually read that piece. I think it was things like, wasn't it something to do with events in Iraq and extremist events like hostage? I think one of them, they were actually able to precog the outcome, and they were sort of doing brain and heart analysis as well, and noticed that the heart rate sped up and the brain waves sped up before the actual horrific images came up.
I'm not sure about that one. There's probably multiple studies. Anthony, I think you've got information on that, haven't you? Hopefully Anthony hasn't been kicked out and we're not suffering technical difficulties. Ian, can you hear me? Turns out that Anthony is suffering from problems.
Sorry. I am.
I'm going to remove Anthony from co-hosting and then we'll give it back to him.
Okay, dude.
Now let's give him action back again. Let's see what's going on. Nice to see you, Wiser. Down there. Yeah, it'd be fascinating to keep in contact with yourself, Jules, on this. Yeah, you're back, which is good.
Yeah.
I thought you just didn't want to talk to me.
No, my mic just went for some reason. But yes, what we're talking about here is the research done by oh dear, what's his name? Works for Ions. It was research that was done about 1998, and it was to do with people being shown a series of pictures, and pictures were of kittens and God knows what else. It was Dean Radin and Dick Bierman. I think it was Bierman and Radin. And what they did was they tested the conductance, the electrical conductance of the skin. And when you feel tense or nervous, the conductance of the skin goes up. And what they discovered was that most people could anticipate the next picture was going to be horrific. And the conductance would go up, and lo and behold, there'd be a picture of a car crash or something like that. Now, as I've suggested in this is not quite as convincing as it may be. And you need to take into account something called the gambler's fallacy. And the gambler's fallacy is simply that if somebody's playing roulette on red and black, if you're waiting and you're betting on red and black keeps coming up, you work on the assumption that because there's been 6 reds in a line, the chances statistically of the next one being black is really high. But of course it's not. It's still only 50-50. And there was a suggestion made that the people in the Bierman and Radin experiment, as the more and more pictures were shown of fluffy kittens and cloudscapes and sunsets, the more they built up the anticipation the next one was going to be a horrible one. So there is an aside there, but I don't think that's necessarily a good argument. It's an explanation, but it's not necessarily a correct explanation. We can explain many things, but it doesn't mean your explanation is the right one. It could be that as we're interpreting it, could be the correct one. I'd also, because I got cut off when we were discussing this before, I didn't quite catch it all, but I assume we were talking about the Pearl Laboratories work, whereby there was this number generator and it kept kicking up.
The consciousness one, yeah. Before you start on that one, I just want to check with Spiral and JC where their actual question is going to be, because Spiral had his hand up and it went down. Spiral, was that connected to Jules? If you can hear us.
Yeah, thanks. But no, I was just going to, seeing faster than 24 frames per second, I think there are some people that can do that. I mean, 60 frames per second or 60 frames per second or less, usually I would so much prefer plus 60 frames per second. It's so much smoother. I can see so many more details and fluidity patterns. Anyway, that was all. It's not really
okay.
That's
No problem. Keep your hand going up, which is good. JC, where was your question going to go?
First off, can you hear me fine?
Yeah, yep. It's going through well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is Anthony still in here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, I see him. So Anthony, sorry. Bear with me, please, but I'm very ignorant to the subject, topic.
Don't worry about it. We're all learning together. You don't have to say you're ignorant about anything, because I'm not very good on accountancy or anything else. You will have to learn from somewhere, and it's getting the information from the right kind of people is the main gain from it all.
Yeah. So Anthony, did you mention that you had epilepsy?
No, I suffer from classic migraine.
Okay.
Myron has temporal
does.
lobe epilepsy. Yeah.
Okay. Myron. Okay. So I guess this would be a question for Myron. Myron, have you gone to check to see where your focus of epilepsy is? Also, does the focus of the epilepsy, does it change locations?
In my case, it's in the left hippocampus, in the visual memory section of it. That's where the scar tissue is, and that's why I have the hallucinations that are produced. They come from that part of the brain. But more importantly, why the content? That's the really important question. I worked with hundreds and hundreds of epileptics when I was on the board of the Epilepsy Foundation, and very few of them had experiences that I had. A lot of them have other experiences, but they're not conducive to what I experienced. But the question always remains, after you get done with explaining things, why this particular image? Why this particular experience? Why is that given to you? Why is that vouchsafed to you when it doesn't go to, say, Bob or Jim or Frank or Linda? Why don't they get it? Why am I just getting this stuff? And even though mine has to do with visual memory, I can be out 10, 12 hours and no one has been able to explain that. Anthony's come closest with that theory of schizophrenic, but The fact is that no one has an explanation of that, and because seizures don't last very long. You know, if they last more than 4 or 5 minutes, you're going to die. So they give you, they give you massive amounts of drugs to stop your brain from seizing. But the weird part of mine is that these visions go on for hours and hours and hours, and I can walk around in them and talk to other beings in them, and Charon and I can go on excursions to other planets and all kinds of stuff. And it doesn't really matter how you feel about that. The point I'm trying to make is why these particular things and not other things. When I was talking to Oliver Sacks about it, I was telling him about the fact that there's a consistency of my experiences that I haven't found in other people that have epilepsy that were in my support groups. And I don't know why that I think that my particular scar or epileptic scar in the brain opens the door that I needed to open after I came out of the coma to find my way into something that had already occurred. I mean, it's a really strange feeling. It's deja vu on steroids. I feel like I've seen all this before somewhere, and I can't shake it. I don't know why. I feel like I have seen it before. So when I make the drawing of it, it's really easy because it's already in my brain, because it seems like it's always been in my brain. I always feel present in the experience. I never feel that I'm out of the experience and looking at it. I'm always present in the now of the event. I don't like to use the word hallucination. So in the event, and the event unfolds like a book. It just turns the page, turns the page, turns the page, and it doesn't stop until it's finished. And when it's finished, it just whoop, it goes away, and I'm back to this particular reality. And what
Just
I
to pause you there, Jules has got a question which is probably going to be relevant.
I was just listening to some of what the gentleman was saying about his experience, and I don't want to jump on a bandwagon, but it sounds very, very similar to some of the experiences that are being discussed at the moment to do with this unknown phenomenon that is getting a lot of research and a lot of talking about in the news. And from that point, when he says about he's able to interact with other things and go on sort of trips to other places, there is a chap called, I think it's Dolan, I'm not sure, who's done some research into people that experience these strange phenomenon, and he's actually discovered that there is another part of the brain that is active and more switched on in people that see these things, and that there could be an element of reality to it. I think it can be found, I can't remember his exact name, but I think he's a Harvard professor, and he's on a lot of the Lex Fridman talks and Joe Rogan talks on YouTube, and they're doing a lot of research into it at the moment. But he's actually found that some of these people that experience this strange phenomenon, like lights, UFOs, entities, things like that, also have similar experiences, and there is actually a part of the brain that appears to be more active in these people. And he's done some research with MRI scans.
Can I come in here? I think that it's probably the temporal parietal junction, which is, there's been a lot of work being done on this at the moment, and the idea that in some way that's the area. And of course, if it's the temporal parietal junction, this effectively again links with temporal lobe epilepsy, because we have the temporal lobes there, which is of course directly to do with Meyer. But I'd also like to jump in here about the other areas of communication, I think, within the brain that I featured in my 2014 book, I think it was, Opening the Doors.
Before you get there, just check with JC if that's going to be past the point that he was just going to respond to or not, if that's okay with you.
Okay, yeah.
JC?
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask
Okay, your audio is a bit in and out at the moment, JC. Are you in a car or is the microphone rubbing on clothing?
I'm in a car, but I just stopped.
That's
I
clear.
guess
That's good. Excellent.
Okay, so I was trying to say that I have a few questions. It all pertains to, you know, epilepsy and the visions that come with it. So it sounds like you are potentially connected to. Oh my God! Of course, ambulance. Just give me a few minutes. I'll be back.
Right. Can I just continue very quickly while the ambulance goes past? Okay. Just to point out that one of the things in one of my books, I discuss other areas of communication within the brain, and I'm particularly interested in the glial cells. I argue in one of my books that we are so preoccupied with neuronal communications via neurotransmitters that everybody's missing the fact that 9/10 of the brain is made up of glial cells. And glial cells have for many years been completely ignored. In fact, the word glial is Latin for glue. And effectively, we believe that the glial cells were just there to hold the neurons in place. But it seems now that we were talking earlier on about non-locality, and Myron mentioned Einstein and the idea of non-locality. But of course, Einstein did that thought experiment to disprove it, but it was proven by John Bell in 1964 and proven in actual reality in an experiment in 1981 by Dalibard and Aspect in Paris. And the idea that communication can happen non-locally and can happen instantaneously. And there's something called the calcium wave that runs through the brain. And I think that is where this instant communication, and I think with people like Myron, I think what is happening is their doors of perception are open because the brain is working in a very, very different way. I just thought I'd get that in there because I noticed JC wants to come back in now.
Come on, baby.
Yeah, so, okay, so I'm going to throw a bunch of questions at you that I don't necessarily know will connect or not. But I wanted to ask, oh my God. So are you sensitive to any specific frequencies?
Who are you talking to?
He's talking to yourself.
You or Anthony?
Well, if he's talking to me, yes. If he's talking to Anthony, Anthony has to answer that.
This sounds like Taxi Driver, doesn't it? You talking to me?
Yeah, right.
Myron, I
when
think
Myron said baby to JC, and we had to remember that the cat's there, it was getting a bit strange at that point. So
no,
Myron,
I think he's
answer about
Myron's.
the frequency bit. Yeah.
As far as frequency is concerned, I'm a musician. So besides hearing B flat in my synesthesia and seeing blue, the only thing that penetrated my coma was music. I could play the piano before the coma and I could play it afterwards, but I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't read or write, or I didn't remember anybody at all, no family or anybody. But the music itself penetrated the coma. So it's in another part of the brain, according to some neurologist friends of mine. And the fact is that vibration and sound move what Castaneda used to call your assemblage point. Now, what he meant by that was that it changes your perceptions in a certain kind of way by the vibration that it produces. So when I hear certain music, whether I'm writing it, playing it, or listening to it just passively, it can trigger visual experiences. It's very strange. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. And I imagine the 100 drums or 1,000 drums guy or whatever it is, whatever his name is, I can't remember.
400 drums, and that's Rian Bevan. You were getting there. There's a few numbers.
Well, I mean, they're just numbers. Anyway, the point of it is that since rhythm is so essential in every culture, and rhythm does have a direct effect on the brain. I mean, after all, I mean, certain if you're doing ragas in India, sometimes they do ragas 25 hours without stopping. So they get in a total meditative state. And ragas are definitely written down. I mean, but then they're all improvised. That's why they can go 25 hours, but it actually alters their consciousness. So when you're talking about musical vibrations, in my case, since it's the thing that penetrated the coma, when I hear certain kinds of sounds, they trigger these visual experiences. Now, I don't know if they're triggering a seizure or whether whether there's no seizure at all, and that it's just another portal. And I've been working on this stuff recently. I mean, because I experienced it most of my life, but I ignored it because I was putting so much emphasis on having a seizure and having that seizure produce the other realities, that I realized that I was getting quite a few realities and jumps to other consciousness through vibration, through sound. And then I wasn't even realizing it. You know, like one time I sat down to write a string quartet. I wrote the whole thing in like 1 day, 2 days. And it was like it was being dictated to me. It was the strangest thing. It was when I was going to graduate school and I was going to get my degree in composition. And I sat down. It's kind of like when I sit down to do a drawing, I just do it, you know, or a painting. I just do it. And it's like it's dictated. It's a very strange connection to the higher brain, as I call it. And I'm sure there's technical words for it, but I think that there's a super intelligence in the brain that you can connect to. And I don't care what does the connection, whether it's sound and vibration, or whether it's, in my case, TLE, or whether it's whatever it is. But all I know is that the vibrations, if they hit a certain frequency, bam, I'm in an altered state. I didn't even recognize it years ago that was true. But I remember sitting at the piano for 16, 17 hours and not be tired at all. And I would just play and play and play and play and play. And I wouldn't have lunch or anything else. And time would be condensed down to, it seemed like a half hour. And I looked at my watch and it would be 8 hours that I'd been playing. And there's something about my relationship with sound that is as potent an influence as the visual one is. So if that answers your question, then I hope it does. But I wish somebody could answer the question for me. I know there are a lot of people in this room that talk about vibration and sound and all that. And I just want to reiterate that rhythm and sound and all that goes back to Paleolithic times. So there's no question that it changes and alters consciousness.
One of the
definitely.
things I'd like to add that a few years ago, I went to the Malevi Sufis, the whirling dervishes in Istanbul.
Amazing.
And spent about 2 or 3 hours there watching the rhythmic dancing and the spinning. And of course, it really brings about altered states of consciousness. Any form of rhythm clearly does this. But I'm particularly intrigued, Myron, as well. You know, in my book, The Daemon, A Guide to Your Extraordinary Secret Self.
Before we move too far, I would like to see if JC's question was answered.
Yes,
and so we got Jules
do.
and then we got Alexi.
Okay.
JC?
Yes, I felt the question was answered. I just want to mention one thing. I'm not looking really for an answer, but I remember watching a video of, you know, this person. I think it was, I don't remember exactly who it was, but they were hitting a tuning fork, which caused the other tuning fork to vibrate. I'm wondering if that's pretty much the same thing that's going on with you.
Well, there's an overtone series in sound. You know that, right? I assume you know that. And
can you just explain for people, Myron, what an overtone sound grouping is, just in case they don't know? Thank you.
Sound is made up of overtones. Like a string. A string has, if you take a string and you cut it in half, you get a perfect fourth, and then you get a perfect fifth, and then you get an octave, and then on and it goes up all the way to about 15 or 16 pitches until you get to minor. Minor's way up at the top. But it's the way the string it vibrates. So if you put a key down on a string, you can get its fundamental vibrating. You can take the piano and hit a key and just sustain it, and it'll vibrate the lower octave. So the string vibrates at a certain rate, and it produces these what they call intervals: perfect fourth, perfect fifth, sixth, seventh, and then on into all the way back down to seconds. And those are just parts of the scale. The scale is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in our case. But of course, there are scales that are 24 notes in a scale, like in India. They have 24 notes in a scale because they have quarter tones, an eighth of a tone. When a sitar player is playing his sitar, he's playing eighths of a tone. That's why it sounds so different than Western music. And so the vibration of sound is relevant to what kind of string you have and how it's cut. But the overtone series is there no matter what. It's always part of the physics of sound, no matter what instrument it is, whether it's sitar or whether it's a piano, whether it's violin or anything else, as long as it's a string.
So that makes sense to you, JC?
Or did that just confuse things?
I don't know. I'm just going to wait for JC to come back, but it's nice to see Hope and Nardine and 33. And obviously, if JC doesn't come back to me, we'll go through to Jules and then come to Alexi and then go down to 33. I'm sure he, as he was just driving, he might have pulled away and might not be able to come back to pick up and talk. So Jules? Ian, can you hear me? Don't tell me. Okay, good, Nadine. That's good.
Yeah, I can hear you, dude. Sorry, I was just doing something else for a minute.
That's fine. It's just I asked Jules if he wanted to continue his conversation. But
sorry.
There he is.
I got cut
That's
off
okay.
for a second.
No problem. Sometimes we've been having technical difficulties, and as long as we can get through it and get through with questions and things, it's all good. Please continue.
And I was interested as to whether any of the people had actually experienced the hum. I've actually found that I've got very good high pitch hearing.
Oh, Jules, you hit a target about the hum.
And I'm
we all have the
unfortunately a
hum.
hum sufferer. I get it at certain times.
Can I just ask you a couple of quick questions about it? I'm not going to load the questions. Okay. Let me do this without loading it. Tell me and describe your hum.
Right, it's a very low pitch, incredibly low. I can feel it. I can almost feel it through my bones. No one else can detect it, though.
Okay, that's good. Is there any other type of hum you hear? I'm going to ask you otherwise on top of this.
No, not that I've
Okay,
noticed.
let's see. And be truthful. Most people are very truthful. That's hopefully your dog, Jules, because we've been hearing phantom dogs before you turned up. Do you ever hear the high pitch hum of fuses in electrical sockets?
I can hear electrical noises. I can detect.
You're part of the group.
I can detect Wi-Fi. I can detect.
I have a high pitch whine as well.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I get, at certain times of the year, I get very, very low pitch hum. I can lie in bed at night. I can feel it coming through the bed.
Because it's your bones getting it.
It's almost
rather than your hearing.
Yeah. And no one else.
For many years, Jules, started to think that I had a bit of a problem with the hum. I thought it was due to urban environments. Then I found in nature I was getting it, and I wasn't getting it elsewhere. And it would come up and turn down. Other people around me, I'd ask them, "Do you hear that now?" And they go, "What?"
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I'm slightly off. There is a woman who I'm going to grab her name, but her name is Bex, and she's investigating the hum, and she works. And she's also part of Edgeways, which is another organization. So I'm going to dive off and grab that. But I'm glad. I mean, it's odd. By organically coming here. How did you get here today, by the way?
I just spotted it and thought it looked interesting.
You see, synchronicity and organic kind of growth is amazing, because I would have thought if you had explained what you'd done then, that you've been listening to previous events that we've taken and talked about, but no, you're bang on the money for what's going on with what we like to discuss. So
I'm one of these people, unfortunately or fortunately, that's interested in the UFO phenomenon. And for a long time, I've had experiences right the way back through childhood, and it appears to be a family. It goes down my father's side of the family. Experiences with strange lights, strange sounds. My father's had some very, very, very strange experiences, but so did his mother, my grandmother. And my father experiences the hum the same as me, and I experience the hum, and we're the only two people in the family that can detect it. But we've also got very, very high pitched hearing ability as well, to the point where my neighbours a few doors away had a cat scarer, one of those electronic cat scarers in their garden, and I had to go and knock on the door and complain about it, and they thought I was mad when I said, I can hear that at night and it's keeping me awake, please can you turn it off or point it in a different direction.
May I ask you another question?
Yeah, sure.
What about trauma to your body? Any?
I had a spinal operation about 20 years ago after I was attacked by a mental health patient and needed a spinal operation.
Okay, so that's a nervous system disruption.
Yeah.
What about anything above shoulders?
No
head trauma. So it's nervous system. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is nervous systems with trauma get turned up like an antenna, and it's really fascinating. I've researched this due to the fact of my own kind of conditions.
I was really interested in the gentleman that was talking about these sort of auras and entities and things that he sees when he has an epileptic fit.
Myron,
yeah.
Myron can continue on that. I'm just going to grab the Beck's information, put it into the shared area.
Thank you. There's a lot of people actually on the, I'm not jumping on the bandwagon because I keep an open mind on it, but there's a lot of people on the UFO forums and talking about their experiences through life, and right the way from childhood, they've had very similar experiences. And obviously, there's a lot of research done into temporal lobe epilepsy with people that see things that they can't explain. And the more I look at it, the more I feel, and as a nurse as well, looking into strange things that have happened, the more I feel that it definitely is some kind of switching with the nervous system, and people are almost becoming an antenna and either plugging into some kind of shared experience, past, present, and future, or perhaps we're more aware of things that other people aren't aware of. Do you know what I mean? Almost like a sixth sense.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, you're hitting all the points of what I like to talk about and everybody else likes to talk about in this place. So thank you for that.
You know,
thanks, Jules.
If you're asking me, and I'm Myron, I've had extraterrestrial experiences ever since I came out of the coma. What I mean by that is that I go to another planet I call Zelkon. That's the name I got. And I go there, it's in Orion's belt. And I go there instantaneously. So there's no spaceship, it's all consciousness. And since I believe in cosmic consciousness, I don't have any trouble with the distances or the time, and all of that's irrelevant anyway. But the fact is that I think I've been experiencing what could be considered extraterrestrial intelligences. It can be interpreted as that. I don't interpret it as that, but that there are certainly people who know me and have studied me and stuff that think that they are extraterrestrial, and I don't know about that. All I know is that ever since I was a child, I was able to see different kinds of beings that were not from this world, and that some of them were from extraterrestrial worlds. And I remember one time when I was on Zelcon, I was talking to Charon, and there were all these doubles, these groups of two walking around the planet. There was just hundreds of them, and there was a person and their guide, like Charon and myself. And I said, "Can we go talk to them? I mean, there must be some interaction we can have with them." And she said, "No, we can't go talk to them because what you're looking at is your own incarnations in other dimensions. So if you were to go there and connect with one of those, it would split your whole consciousness and you never recover from it. So those other beings aren't other beings at all. Those are you in other dimensions." So then I jumped from the UFO kind of thing where you actually see a flying saucer or an unidentified flying object or something to universal consciousness and the experience of bringing this consciousness into um, time and space, and that it's omnipresent. In other words, it's everywhere and nowhere. And when you walk into it, there it is. And so that explains, for me, that explained a lot of the terrestrial experiences that I had with certain kinds of beings. Like on the cover of Whitney Strieber's first book, you see a gray or whatever it is. And I know that Tony knows him because he wrote the introduction to the Open of the Doors of Perception. And Strieber, of course, is big on ufology and all that kind of stuff. But he's also a suspect of TLE, by the way. He was examined for temporal lobe epilepsy, and they didn't find anything, but that doesn't mean anything. They didn't find anything on me for 50 years. So, because they didn't know what they were doing. But he's convinced of his experiences, and I'm certainly convinced of mine. So as far as ufology and all of that, I read everything I could get my hands on after I read Strieber's book and the Communion, and then I found myself in those books, but not in the way of extraterrestrials coming here in spaceships, but actually cosmic consciousness, a kind of universal consciousness that exists in the universe, and it just comes and goes as it pleases. And if you're a receptor, you're a receptor. Maybe that's what that hum is. But anyway, the fact is that when it comes into my unconscious, it comes in, and there it is, and I don't fight it. A lot of people fight it and get scared, have and hyperventilate and all kinds of things. I don't do that. I just accept whatever the experience is and go with it and find out what it is that relates to me and my behavior and my life and all of that. I don't question its reality or how it got here. I just interface with it. So that's kind of my ufology kind of thing.
Excellent. I have to say that I want to check with Anthony because of timings, because we've got questions here, and I don't know what time you want to finish. I know 5 o'clock was the kind of time that you did say, but it looks like there's quite a few questions that we could get through.
I could probably go to about 10 past at the latest.
Okay, excellent. We'll go straight on to Alexi then, and then we'll go to 33.
Yeah, hello. Many experiences and paintings that Myron paints are similar to experiences that I have that were very torturous, and I just experienced migraines, and maybe Myron has the similar experiences and just forgets about them. But this experience stay with me because they were torturous. And also, instead of Zelkon, I just see different rooms in my life where I was. And talking about music, I'm a lucid dreamer, and I had a lucid dream where I was just arranging notes in the chorus numerous times before I made it perfect. Yeah, that's it.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, particularly bringing in the whole concept of lucid dreaming, which again, I'm always referencing my previous books, aren't I? But the book, The Out of Body Experience, I discuss in great detail lucid dreaming, and it's one of the areas that I'm working very closely with a number of researchers from around the world in trying to understand when we talk about the out of body experience, what are we talking about as well? So that is interesting. Also, that the link with migraine as well. You know, that again is something that is fascinating. And of course, you know, with my concept of the Huxleyan spectrum, there clearly is a great deal of links with this. So thank you for that.
Yeah, another thing, I just want to be honest. Your daemon theory doesn't work with me. It's just
okay. That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. You know, what can I say? Well, I don't really know. If it doesn't work with you, it doesn't work with you. Have you actually read the book?
I have heard all your podcasts. Maybe I should read the book.
Yeah, I'd just like to have your opinion on it in terms of that, because the daemon model seems to work for a lot of people, but it may not work for everybody. And I'd be very keen to have your feedback on that, because as I said earlier on, for me, it's important. What's more important to me is feedback rather than support necessarily for the hypothesis, because we're trying to get to truths here.
Oh, sorry for that. I thought I saw gaps again. It'd be good if Brad could do it from the point of view of his migraine viewpoint on the daemon, and then kind of outlay it in possibly, you know, bullet points or something like that, and that could help you have a conversation between both yourselves in the future.
No, that would be wonderful. I'm very much up for that.
What do you think, Brad? Alexei, sorry. One of these days I have all three names in one go.
The book can be sent to me.
Yeah, so be able to find that. Right, okay, 33, how you doing? Nice to see you. Obviously, it's a very good introduction that he disappeared. There he's back again. I turned my head to look to see what other information was coming in via messaging, and I've sent the invite to him now. We'll see if it's get there. Nice to see you, Noreen Hill, as well.
Hello, Noreen. Hope things are good for you on Bromber Pool. I've known Noreen since my childhood.
Excellent. If Noreen wants to talk, I've just sent her an invitation. So 33, back to yourself. .33, can you hear me?
I'm having technical difficulties. Give me a second.
Don't worry, we had a whole hour of it this morning with technical difficulties, and it was causing grief left, right, and centre.
Yeah. So what's this technical difficulty?
Can you hear me now?
We can beat you on that.
Can you hear me now? I just took my earphones out. Can you hear me now?
No. We can hear you fine. It's okay. It's all good.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. You're talking. My son's had like 7, 8 seizures in the last year, and
oh my God.
And yeah, it's been quite a revelation, and I'm just trying to understand what is the frequency and what's going on, and how the collective mindset, how it affects people. And so I'm. So I'm listening to you guys, and watching somebody that you love, almost like go through that is like excruciatingly tough, and I don't know how to explain it, because my son kind of says some of the same things you do, Kyron, and deja vu, all that stuff, and I'm just delving into all of this stuff, and it's overwhelming. And so I would appreciate any input on like these seizures and what they represent. And I know they're sacred disease, and maybe you could touch on that a little bit.
Where do you live?
I'm in Arizona.
There's an epilepsy society there in Arizona that you can contact. In fact, there's one in every state, and there are 3 in California, one down here, one in San Diego, and one up north in San Francisco. It's called the Epilepsy Foundation of America. That's the national organization that I was on the board of. What kind of seizures does your child have?
They're pretty severe and intense.
Are they? Does he lose consciousness and does he have? Does he fall and hit the floor, or is it just that he just goes away and then he comes back?
He just, it's almost like I'm talking to him, and he just almost like he's like getting electrocuted, and then he just like just doesn't answer, and I could just I already know because it's been so many times already, and it's I have to say it's quite shocking to me to endure. It's a revelation for me myself, and so it's like I'm watching him being electrocuted, and and so the only thing, and then he gets up with a force, like I'm trying to hold, trying to save him, and he's pushing me off of him and pushing anybody away from him. It's quite a phenomenon. I don't know what I'm dealing with, and I'm I know that there's more to this, and we're dealing with neurologists, psychiatrists, and we're not getting the answer that I need. So hopefully maybe you guys might be able to fill in a few things for me. I'd be so grateful and blessed if you would so kindly opine.
If you would want to contact me, I would be glad to talk to you about this offline, because this is pretty big and there's a lot of details. If you want to contact me, you can contact me through Facebook, and
do you have DM on? Do you have DM on Twitter? Because I don't have Facebook.
Well, I'm on Twitter, so you could get me there too.
Okay, I followed you. I've been listening to you for a long time. That I want to thank you. I've been listening to all of you for a very long time, and this is I know your struggle, and oh man, I can't even grasp what's going on. So maybe you can enlighten me, please.
I know it's really scary. So if you want to talk to me, let's talk offline so Tony can have his discussion, and we're running out of time here, but I'm very interested in helping with this. So if you can give me just send me a message, then maybe I can give you a phone number and we can talk.
Blessings. Thank you so much. I don't mean to interrupt. This is a great thing, and we're all going through all this together, and we're all connected. I know. I just it's just hard to watch somebody like get electrocuted.
I understand. Yeah. I completely understand.
Totally, and so do I as well. I mean, it must be horrendous. I know, again, my associate friend of mine, Ed, when he was dealing with his son, I know that it was incredibly hard for him as well, and dealing with it. And I know that Ed has devoted a lot of his time. And again, 33, if you want to check out on my YouTube site, and I interview Ed on there, and we talk about how he deals with the difficulties he's had with his son or the challenges he's had. So check that out as well. You know, it's it must be very, very hard for you, or you have our sympathy.
Also, there's one other place you can go, and that's called the Charlie Foundation. It's run by Jim Abrams, a film director whose son had epilepsy and was cured by John Hopkins' ketogenic diet by Dr. Freeman. So look at the Charlie Foundation and contact them. They're online, so just type in the Charlie Foundation, and you can get a lot of questions answered by them. The child neurologists that are there are very good, and Jim is very active in child neurology. So try that too. Try contacting the Charlie Foundation. It's online and it's here in LA.
Thank you so much. I'll DM you privately, guys. I appreciate it. Paul, thank you so much. This has been, the only thing that can break a person is a child, right?
Absolutely.
And I love my boy, and I don't understand. It's like I'm watching him, like I can't even explain it. But I love you all, and thanks for.
No problem. I've actually given Myron your contact details via DM, so that's there now for him. So it's all connected up.
Great, thanks, Paul.
No problem. And also, I see Mike is down there as well. If he wants to pick up the invitation to speak, and also the Blue Collar Enlightenment podcast is back, which is nice to see you as well. It's always great to see you around, and you always have great content. And if nobody knows, while I'm waiting for Mike to pick up the invitation, T-Rex is also part of Continuing the Conversation podcast, and also their Discord server is fantastic. Mike, pick up the invitation. Tell me you can. If not, I will leave you out there in the void. Right, you're going to the void, Mike. I'm sorry to tell you about this. You've got an invitation there. I reckon he's doing something, or just listening. Just trying to see if there's messages bouncing backwards and forwards. So please continue, Anthony, while I find out what's happening with Mike.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so far this has been absolutely a fascinating discussion on so many different levels. And again, I think it's wonderful to have people like Myron involved here as somebody who has experienced so many things I discuss. And again, if any of you guys are interested, you'll find that there are whole sections where I feature Myron's experiences in a number of my books. And it is extraordinary.
Most definitely. Also, the podcasts that you do with Myron are really amazing. And again, the fact that if you go to Myrondal, all one word.com, on there is actually your podcasts with him as well. So it's very easy to pick up from. And again, Mike Fiorito says that we need to give you a hug because he can't actually speak at the moment. And my arms aren't long enough. So just imagine that you got a virtual hug from Mike Fiorito.
Oh, good. Well, Mescalito is with us. Mike will get that joke. So.
Absolutely.
He's also a very good author as well, Mike Fiorito. So pick him up on Twitter.
He is indeed. His short stories that to die for are really, really, really brilliant.
Yeah, just don't really die, because you need to buy more books to help him get popular. If you buy one book and die after it, not going to help his sales in any way.
Yeah, so don't do that.
Tony, talk about the Damien thing a little bit for that gentleman who didn't believe it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, my argument is that, for instance, in the 1960s, there were a series of split brain operations that took place, done by people like Roger Sperry and Michael Gazzaniga. And the concept was that people who had intractable epilepsy, one of the main reasons for people losing, as Myron, losing consciousness is when the electrical storm crosses across the corpus callosum and and goes across both hemispheres of the brain, which causes people to lose consciousness. So the idea was that a way of curing this would be to cut the corpus callosum, that is the thick body group of nerves that holds together the left and right hemisphere. By cutting that, they could stop the storm going from right to left hemisphere. This worked. However, what they hadn't expected was when Komatsumori, which was the technical term for the operation, took place, they ended up with individuals with two completely different personalities. And one of the incidents I describe in Cheating in my first book was of a young man called PS. And PS was asked what he wanted to do when he grew up. He was an 17 or 18-year-old, and he said he wanted to be a quantity surveyor. Now, the thing about the non-dominant hemisphere, for most people, it's non-verbal, because the verbal sections, Wernicke's area and Broca's area, are in the dominant hemisphere. But the left hemisphere, the non-dominant right hemisphere, works the left hand. And what happened was, as the young lad was turning around and saying that he wanted to be a quantity surveyor, there was Scrabble cards on the table, and the left arm of him came out and grabbed some Scrabble cards and wrote the words automobile racer. And as Sperry and Gazzanega said, this is intriguing. This means that there's a totally different personality in there that's been continually overruled by the dominant hemisphere. Now, again, you'll recall earlier on I mentioned about the WADA test that my friend Jane had, where she said she started to sense another being within her head that was her and not her. And what I argue is that somewhere within the brain, or somewhere within the sphere around the brain, or whatever we want to call it, we have an element of ourselves that is immortal. The part of us that goes from life to life, the part of us that goes from life simulation to life simulation. And I call that entity the daemon. And I call it specifically going back to ancient Greek legends, where there is this idea that they believe that we all are given at birth a daemon. And this daemon is there to guide us. And it goes back right back to Socrates, because Socrates had a daemon, and the daemon guided him throughout his life. And in my book, The Daemon, A Guide to Your Extraordinary Secret Self, I cite scores of examples of people throughout history who have been guided by a voice, guided by something that tells them not to do things or to do things. One example is somebody who wrote to me, said that he was driving down a country lane, and suddenly he found his left arm, i.e. in an English car, pulling down the steering wheel of the car to drive him off the road as a lorry came careering along the wrong side of the road. And he said, had my left hand not done that, I would have been killed. So clearly, and you'll find evidence from this almost continually throughout history, and also in famous writers. I mean, for instance, Rudyard Kipling actually called his higher self that guided him to write his books his daemon. And he said it used to just dictate the stories to him. And this daemon, go on.
No, go ahead.
And this daemon was precognitive, and he used to incorporate into stories that Rudyard Kipling had written evidence of his own existence, his own precognitions, because he described things in his books that were only subsequently discovered by archaeological excavations in buildings. Like,
when you're sorry, another pause I thought you had there. JC's been waiting, and obviously Brad is talking about the daemon as well on that one. So I just want to make sure JC isn't left behind in the cold.
No, pull them in. Pull them in.
JC. JC. Waiting for him out in the void. Okay, Brad, until JC comes back, I'm going to let Alexei, come in.
I think a lot of people are waiting for the return of JC. I think it's probably 33 AD. And
yeah, don't get into a religious point. We're getting to deep water at that point. Alexei?
Yeah, I had in childhood a recurring dream where I was thinking that I was returning back to the village where I spent a lot of time, but it appears it was a precognitive dream, because I got to the same building in a video game called Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I experienced a lot of precognition. Just I don't have this. I know where my ideas come from their point of birth to realization. I just never experienced automatic voices, and I woke not to hear these voices.
I think the issue is that people, I argue that it depends upon the level of the communication channels as to whether the daemon speaks to you, whether the daemon messages you in precognitive dreams or in dreams, or indeed whether the daemon communicates with you in a term in English called inklings, that kind of feeling and sensation sometimes. And people have over the last 2 decades have written to me to give me their own experiences of the daemon. And sometimes that happens. I mean, I feel that my daemon is active in my life, and she is very active in my life. And rather like Myron, I consider my daemon to be the opposite sex to me. And a lot of people say that this is the case. And again, probably, you know, the His Dark Materials movies and TV series by Philip Pullman, where the daemons are around in there, and the little animals that follow people around. But I think it depends on how open the communication channels are as to how effective the daemon is. And I think for many people, the daemon is completely quiet because their doors of perception are so tightly closed. But listen to that quiet voice, that kind of feeling that you have sometimes, that you meet somebody for the first time and you know that they're going to be important to you, or they're going to be a problem to you. How many times do people say, you know, I met my future husband and I just knew straight away? And I'd argue that's because your daemon remembers that person from the last time you lived your life. And this is how your daemon knows your future, because it's lived your life before. It is not precognitive. As I said in the title of my book, the Philip K. Dick book, Philip K. Dick, the man who remembered the future. You're remembering the future. And this is a very important point. And I think I'm one of the few writers that can explain precognition using logic and basic science.
True. Anthony, I've got somebody who wants to ask you a question, but I can't pronounce their top line of their Twitter account, and it looks like at Joe, so that's not really easy for me to do. So I don't know. You're gonna have to give us a name.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can, but I don't know how to address you.
John.
John, that's better, because obviously those two icons.
We can all pronounce John. John is very pronounceable.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask Anthony a question about Neville Goddard and what he thinks about his teachings, because I think they're kind of like really similar.
I don't know Neville Goddard. Please explain more.
Basically, he's from like a teacher from he started in 1939 to about 1970 he went, and basically it's kind of linked to law of attraction, but it's not that. Like he talks about inner being within yourself, and he calls it God. Like it's basically what you call the daemon. But in your from your teaching, you say it guides you, but from his teaching, he says you guide it. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. Can I just say the terminology there? I'm not a teacher. I don't teach. You know, I don't put myself off as being any kind of expert that people should view as a guide or anything. So just to clarify,
I just ask? Yeah, that's a good point. Can I just ask John? Are you in a car? Because your audio is kind of going backwards and forwards, and it's always best to try and just clean it up as best as possible. Okay.
What I will do is I'll check him out. I think I know something about this. I think I have a vague recognition about this, and I think something I said earlier on this morning in one of the other presentations was that there's many paths up the mountain, but the view at the top is still the same. And I think a lot of the writers that deal with this idea of accessing the higher self in different ways, we're all talking about the same phenomenon. It's just we analyze the phenomenon in different ways. I tend to analyze it scientifically or neurologically, but other people will analyze it spiritually. So I don't think any of us are wrong, or necessarily any of us are right. But we're all wandering around talking about the same thing. I mean, there's the books of Urantia, which talk about the higher self. There's various aspects of this as well, all of which are relevant to me and are important.
I just found it interesting that he's from like 1939, and he talks basically pretty much about the holographic universe he's describing, and he was like, oh, when you die, you go to a different reality, you just wake up in a different reality, which is along the lines of what you say as well.
Yeah, extraordinary. What was his first name again? It was Goddard was the second name.
It's, Neville Goddard.
Neville, thank you.
Yeah, there's also Joseph Murphy. He's like the same kind of thing from the same era.
Okay, I will check those out. Thank you very much, John. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Quick question to yourself, John. How did you find us today?
Well, I was actually going to mention it because I seen a status from Anthony on Facebook, and I thought, I want to ask him about Neville Goddard, but I couldn't write on his comments.
Oh,
so,
okay.
But literally, I'd say maybe a minute after that, the notification for this live popped up on my YouTube.
There's a nice synchronicity for you.
There you go. That's how life works.
I don't even subscribe to your YouTube though, so I don't know how it popped up.
Wonderful. Well, it goes to show you were fated to introduce me to Neville Goddard.
Excellent.
So that's fantastic. Thank you.
And John, have you actually checked out the website perceptionstoday.com? Because that's where we have all the main lists and also have the events list of who the different people are and the different parts of the podcast that are there as well.
No, it's the first time I've ever seen it, so I'll have a look.
Okay. Feel free to look. You don't have to do anything with it, but we always like to make sure that people are aware of information.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
You.
Yeah,
right.
Continue, Anthony.
I'm going to have to probably shoot now because I'm out of time. So by all means, you don't need me necessarily to continue the conversations, but I'm going to have to leave you now. So all I can say is thanks everybody for listening in, and we'll be doing this again soon. So just thank you.
Oh, definitely. Thank you very much for all your time and effort, Anthony. As you know, this has gone out to YouTube Live, but we're also going to take it down into a boiled down podcast as well at the same time, but that will come later on. So as you can find at the moment, it's out there live, which is good. And obviously we can continue for another 10, 15 minutes if people are on for that and just have a kind of wrap up if they want.
Yeah,
so,
it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what you talk about when I'm not there. It's like obviously overhearing people's conversations at your own funeral.
Will your ears be burning though? That's the main thing.
They probably won't be. Right. Okay then. Okay, guys. Thanks very much for joining in, and special thanks to Myron for massive contribution.
Before you go,
Tony, have a good day.
Will do.
Obviously, as you want to do it again at some point, we're obviously scheduled one for in the next couple of months coming up and do that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Super. Same kind of session, 2 sessions.
Oh, definitely.
Okay,
yeah. Okay. Speak to you soon. Thanks
bye.
again.
Bye, Tony.
Bye. See ya. Bye.
See ya.
Now, my co-host, how did you end up just being a speaker? That's what happened to you.
I was pressing buttons what I shouldn't have pressed, and I baited myself out of the room. Sorry about that.
You shouldn't run away at that point. No, so we're getting a lot out of the information from everybody in the room, which is superb. I wonder if JC's actually made it to the ability to come back and talk to us. Obviously not.
Oh, I see him.
I see him, but there's no communication there. So that's good. Well, it's not good there's no communication. It would be nice to see a sign of life. That's the main thing which we're saying, which is good. And it's nice to see Jeffrey down there. Sorry, Ian?
I was just saying, we still got Myron. That's all that matters.
Have we got favoritism going on now? Which is good. I mean, now that Anthony's ears are burning, the fact that he's been replaced by Myron as number one, that's just going to be a problem, I think.
Nah,
that is a problem.
Anticipation is key, right?
Right. You know, what's interesting about my relationship with him is it was another one of those things that Charon contacted him and told him to call me. Now that's what he says. So that's pretty unusual for that to happen. So are you guys all still there? Because I don't hear.
Yes, we're all still here. We were just listening.
Okay, yeah. So he said that Charon contacted him and that he called me, or he contacted me through Facebook, I think it was. back years ago when we first started talking. So my Damien actually called him, and now I don't know how that happened, and I'm not. That's not up to me to figure out. So I just know that's what he said. And when I was talking to Oliver Sacks about this, he was talking to me about a lot of his experiences when he was on certain kind of psychotropic drugs, when he was doing research and when he was an undergraduate. And a lot of what he expressed from his experiences with drugs of various kinds are manifested the same as when I have my visions. So we were talking a lot about that quite a bit. I mean, he talks about the famous breakfast he had one time. He was living in Topanga Canyon, which is close to me here, and he was making breakfast, and his friend showed up. So he said, "I'll make you breakfast too." So he was making breakfast, and he put the breakfast down on the table for the three of them, and they weren't there. So he was really hallucinating them, and he hadn't been taking anything currently. So something triggered his what I called before the assemblage point, and there they were, as big as life, talking to him. He made breakfast for them, and they weren't there. So that's how he got interested in my experiences. Because the experiences are actually tactile. Now that's unusual. I feel my body being touched by the Damien, as Tony calls it. And I think I said this once before, that Charon had saved my life more than once. There's the car thing, where I was going to step off the curb and something grabbed me and pulled me back, and a car went right around the corner, and that car would have run me down. This is when I was in junior high school, and I would have been dead right there, except that something pulled me back, and I turned around to thank whoever it was, and there was no one there. So later on, I knew that I found out that was Charon that was doing that was protecting me. So you can take that any way you want, whether you believe in Damians or not. Also, there's an experiment. I don't know if you've heard about it or not, where I think they were physicists. They got together on a Ouija board and they created a person that didn't exist.
The skull experiment.
Yeah, and yet it worked. They
made a tulpa.
started. Yeah, they started answering questions, and they had created another entity by just talking about him. And when people ask me all the time, well, how can you connect to your Damien? How can you do that if you don't have epilepsy? And I basically tell them, you start talking to the entity as if it's there, and it'll manifest itself eventually. It just does. I don't know why, it just does. I do know why. It's because it's in your brain, like Tony said. It's a part of you that you're going to project out. So if you start talking to it and you start interacting with it, even at first you don't see anything and you don't get anything back, eventually you will get something back. And
most definitely. Sorry, I was just going to say that we've got a few people with questions, and I'm probably going to wrap it up in the next 20 minutes. So just to make sure that your order is there, we got 33 Rule. Then we had Lexi with her hand up, which has gone down but might come back up again. Then Alexi, and then obviously there's Jules there. So I just want to let you know that I do know you're there. So yes, Myron, if that's when you finish your bit, then obviously we go to 33 and bring all those through quickly.
Go ahead and
33.
Are you there, 33?
Today we're having technical difficulties on loads of areas. Okay, so 33, if you don't come back in the count of 5, we're going to go to Lexi, but we will come back to you. Oh, JC's back. Excellent. Lexi?
What happened? Did I missed part? I'm sorry. I was up till like 4:30 or 5 in the morning, like when the first space. Did I just miss the second space? Is that what's happening right now?
I'm afraid you
Well,
did.
you're not really missing it. You're in it, and it's also going out on YouTube, so I can give you the link, so you won't have actually
Okay.
missed it.
For sure. It's 9:30 in the morning. I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy that we're still. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
We
Hope
didn't
it was
continue round the
good.
clock for you, so that's okay.
There you go. All right. I'll check out. I hope it went well.
Oh, it has gone extremely well. There's lots of information, and again, when I pass it to yourself, it's now there in your direct messaging. And again, everybody, if you want to help us get more people to solve things or connect dots or connect with other researchers or other people that have got experiences, if you share our details like the perceptiontoday.com or even just the YouTube channel, which you can find easily, then that would be great, because the more people that we talk to, the greater the connection. And Meyer and everybody else like Mike Fiorito, Ian, 33 Rules, Lexi, Fred, and many more who are in the room, like T-Rex, and that's Trent Stevens to you, and also Alexi. They've all been helpful to try and get more information, and we seem to be connecting a lot of dots, which is really great. So if you go to the YouTube channel, which is again Perceptions Today, just subscribe and just leave a comment saying, I've subscribed, then I'll reply to that, and we can obviously hold conversations, etc. So let's see if 33 is there again. If not, we'll go to Alexi. Okay, Alexi.
Yeah. Do you think that there was an argument that Cascaranel, another Anthony Peake's friend, the psychologist told her that she was trying to get back to her memory, and
Hang on,
that
you have to say the name again for me because I didn't catch it properly.
Cascaranel.
Pascaranel, yeah?
Yeah,
I'll look it
there
up
was
on his YouTube.
a
Don't worry.
hypothesis that she tried to return to her previous memory. And maybe what has happened to Oliver Sacks is that he tried, his consciousness tried to return to the memory of these two friends that were next to him. Yeah, a theory.
Maybe. I've just found Anthony Peake's actual link for that. So I'm copying that and we'll actually throw it into the shared section. If anybody else has got anything to add to Alexi's bit there, because I haven't actually seen that interview to go through it at this present time. Has anybody?
Doesn't look like it.
No, so we're going to have to come back to that one. I'm just putting the information now, and it just takes me a little while because I'm running fingers across different devices as it works, which is always fun because you can see me make mistakes at that point, and hopefully we don't make too many of them. Right, there's the one.
Yeah, also, maybe there is a phenomena that only writers experience, and it's completely independent from migraines and epilepsy.
You have to say that again. I know we got the epilepsy part and migraines. What's the other bit of that sentence?
Some writers experience phenomena that completely separate and independent from migraines and epilepsy. Maybe Dostoevsky was experiencing the thing that all writers experience, like returning to
like the duality
wonderful
bit.
memories. Yeah, and this is multifactorial analysis.
Okay.
Well, there's no question that there are all kinds of ways to connect to consciousness, and it can have nothing to do with epilepsy or migraine. I mean, there are plenty of examples of that. So I don't think Tony or myself were saying that that's the route to expanded consciousness, because that's just not true. Meditation is just as strong a doorway to cosmic consciousness as anything else, and just making yourself available to it is also just as important. So
Oh,
I would agree
definitely.
with you.
There's so much that we can dive into. Again, it's all just about time and having that opportunity. Right now, Jules.
I just wanted to sort of say something to Myron, actually, because there's obviously quite a lot of parallels in between what we've been discussing this afternoon and the UAP, UFO, ghost, monsters, legends sort of thing that's going on at the moment, and it comes under the umbrella of the phenomenon. How does Myron feel about people? I mean, obviously, I work in healthcare. I've come across a lot of people over the years that have had multiple personality disorders, and after listening to a lot of what people have said this afternoon, I'm actually wondering, have they got multiple personality disorders? Is there some kind of problem with the people that I've looked after in the past, or are they just in touch with their daemons? What test is there to know
An interesting.
whether...
Oh, sorry, Jules. I thought you paused. I was going to say, if you read Anthony Peake's book about opening the doors to perception, he talks about the fact that with dementia and also epilepsy and also schizophrenia, having kind of, if you imagine, we got many filters on so we don't go crazy, but when you take a few of those filters off, you're getting too much information and it can overload the system. But it's also a kind of rewiring to being a greater antenna to more things that are out there, which is that kind. And it's fascinating what you're saying, because it really does kind of fit into what we've all been discussing, which is good.
Thank you.
And obviously, feel free to come back. And again, Tim Bragg has actually said he's been subscribing to the podcast and also signing up to the email events list as well. He also enjoyed the very stimulating conversation and said to say thank you to everyone that's been talking, and also to have a great time with reading Anthony's latest book, which is superb. And Fred, nice to, hang on, no, JC's still there with his hand. Good to see you. He's still functional. I see sounds alive. I really do.
Well, the hands down.
Yeah, and the speaker came off mute and went back onto mute again. Jay, are you having audio issues? If you are, use the peace symbol. Are you driving? Okay, we'll quickly go to Fred. We'll come back to you, JC. Oh, right, you got audio issues. Okay, and driving. Okay, gotcha. It's good that you're still listening. Fantastic. Fred?
First thing, I was a little sad. I didn't know there was a part 2. But I just had a quick question.
You're on the mailing list. You had the email. Go back home. Read it again.
All right. But yeah, sign me up for the community thing, please. That'd be cool. But yeah, Myron, I was wondering, when you carry on, I don't think I've ever either paid attention or heard, but do you hear it like audibly? Like let's say me talking to you right now, like, is that how you hear Charon, or is it in your head that you hear it, or do you feel it?
It depends on what state of consciousness I'm in. I can have a conversation with Charon that's internal inside my head, or I can have one that is external, depending on where my consciousness is at any particular time. And I can ask questions and discuss things, and then get answers at whatever time Charon wants to give me the answers. I don't manipulate anything, so it's all whenever she decides to talk to me or give me the insight of what we're going to do next. But yeah, I talk to her audibly, and I also talk to her inside my head. And because she's part of me, so sometimes she is me. So we're one thing. it's a Heros Gamos, as they call it, and which means a sacred marriage. That's what the word means. And I feel like that Charon and I are one thing. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, I had another follow-up. I'm sorry. Do you like initiate the conversation, or is it just kind of like well, I guess what I'm asking, are there like prerequisites? Because I know you mentioned where you're at, like your state of mind or state of consciousness, but I know that your seizures play a role in it sometimes too. But just in general, like day to day, do you have to do something to initiate the conversation, or do you just kind of like tap into it?
Well, two things happen. One, every day I meditate for an hour and a half in my underworld, which is where I keep most of my sculptures and stuff, which are all beings. And sometimes
You just have explained that's a basement when you talk
yeah,
about the underworld, because otherwise
yeah,
you got visions of you actually, hacking with a pickaxe going down further, but it's just your basement where your artwork is.
it's not the seventh level of Dante's hell, but anyway, the point of it is that when I'm meditating, sometimes she talks to me and tells me, all right, well, here's what we're going to do today. And then we do what she says. And then other times I'll be working on the computer here and she will say, stop that and listen to what I have to tell you. And we're going to go to the mountain now. And that means I get dressed and I go to the mountain with her. And so whatever she tells me to do, I do it. I don't question it. If something happens, something happens. If nothing happens, nothing happens. My job is just to be obedient to whatever she tells me to do. And that's what I do. And it's all efficacious. It's all wonderful. It's all magical. But it can be very tough. She can be very hard. And she won't answer questions that my ego wants answers to. Just because the ego wants it. No, that doesn't how it works. You have to do the process, the alchemy with her, and then she'll give me the answer will be vouchsafed to me eventually. But it can come either through another source or it can come through her. So I call it a her, but it's actually a he, a her, and an it. The it is just kind of like like a spirit, like a invisible spirit that speaks out of the void. The she looks like a she, and I can make her look any way I want because Karen has given me that power to do that. And the he is a he. So when I was younger, it was mostly he, and now that I'm old, it's she, and that's kind of the Jungian idea of the unconscious connecting to the old as they are getting ready to move on to the next incarnation. So it's usually the anima that takes them there, and in Jungian psychology, the anima is female and the animus is male. So my anima, if you want to call it that, is Charon, and she guides me and talks to me and tells me what to do and shows me things and insights and I might have a day planned and then she'll say, no, we're not going to do that today. We're going to do this. And I just do what she tells me to do. So that's the answer to that.
Excellent. I'm also putting stuff up that Alexi's been sending us, and also Fred, I've given you those links so that you don't have any problems there, which will be great. Obviously, it's nice that you've been able to join us for part 2 on this. I'm just going to see if 33 is actually still there. I see a hand. We're obviously going to be closing down in the next 6 minutes or less, so I think it's just stuck up there.
I think so
not the
too.
way. And it's nice to see. I think that's pronounced Sacroflamma, or just S. Nice to see yourself and that you're into shamanic apprenticeship and also mystic. I'm reading very small script at the moment, holistic astrology. So I'm okay, that's good. It'd be interesting to see if you want to talk and see how you found us today, because I'm interested. So request speaking and then have a quick chat to yourself. And also, there we got Dan down there as well, which no description, but it's nice to see you paying attention to come talk. Ian, how are things going there?
Things are going good. I'm just having a quick chat with Lexi. She's a bit disappointed to miss the this afternoon session. So I was just wondering if you were gonna make that Twitter recording available.
She's already got the actual links to the YouTube live in her direct messaging at this present time. I passed them in.
Okay, that's cool. So
Still
that's
done.
And could I just check? You were chatting with Anthony about him coming back for a part 3 kind of thing. Did you guys set a date for that at all, or are you
There is
still
no date set yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Because we just only kind of formed it in the last half hour.
That's cool. I was just double checking that I wasn't talking absolute rubbish. No, that's absolutely fine, dude.
You never do. It's okay.
Nah.
Right. So, S, use the peace symbol if you don't want to talk, but put the hand up if you want to talk or request the actual mic. It'd be interesting to talk to you because of the way that your bio fits in with us talking about contemplating consciousness. You don't want to talk. Okay, that's fine. So that's how we use the peace symbol here, as it says in the guidelines. So 33, are you there? Because this is almost going to be the last 2 of me asking 33 and then going back to Alexi. Okay, 33 doesn't exist really. So S, can I send you 4 pieces of information which are consciousness related? If so, just send me a direct message and that'd be okay. And again, Dan, oh, is Dan gone? Right. I'm talking to the world of void. Right. Okay, Brad, Alexi. Oh, I want to give you so many names.
Yeah, I have sent you the correct link. You messed up in the Twitter DMs. You have correct one.
It's very kind of you helping me correct my issue. I've only seen the one where you've given me Kaz Coronal in my direct messaging at the moment, which is the last one you sent.
Yeah, that's who I'm inferring about. It's not Pascal, Emmanuel, Michael.
Oh, well, it sounded like that. But anyway, I hopefully have tweeted that already as a tweet, and I'm trying to get it into the nest for some reason. It's not showing up on my phone, but she's a great friend of Anthony's and a very good DJ at the same time. I'm just trying to look down my tweet list to see why it hasn't actually gone anywhere. And it hasn't, even though I put it together. What if it went to draft? That'd be fun. Let's see what we got. So, Ian, you keep talking to people while I just do this, because then we're wrapping up.
Hi, everybody. It's me, your Pulse Having a Moment cover personnel.
Hi, Ian.
So, hey, how you doing? Hey, Mike.
Cracking job, Ian.
Hey, Ian. Hey, Myron. How are you guys? How's it going?
We're doing good. We're doing good.
That's good to hear, Myron. Lots of good stuff going on here. I was listening to the whole thing, but I just wasn't able to speak before. I was with a bunch of rattling kids, so
That's okay.
It's like camp week for kids because they're out of school.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Excellent. I have
little runs to cinema kids. They make films and stuff. So they make films, they act them, they write them, they direct them. So it's kind of cool.
Right.
Excellent.
Cool.
Okay, so Alexi, I've put your tweet now. It's finally got there. It's in the shared section with a bit of luck. And I don't know if you heard, Mike, but we've got Laird Scranton coming back on the 3rd of August at 7 p.m. UK time. And also we got Eileen Myers coming on the 4th, 7 p.m. And again, both are going to be Zoom, both going to be streamed. And I'm in production of their promotional material, but that should be good, as everyone seems to enjoy the content, and there's always great deep dives in these conversations.
Yeah, it's been really good today, hasn't it? Oops, sorry.
Definitely. No, it's okay. Lexi put her hand up and just
Sorry,
collided with
Paul,
your
now you're
conversation.
trying to close the space. I'm just pretty deep on the website right now. I was looking for the schedule coming up. And I'll find it. But if I
Well,
can't
at the
find it,
moment, the schedule hasn't got anything on it because I haven't updated it yet because of how
oh,
quick
it's
I've been putting
completed.
these 2 dates.
Okay, lovely.
But
All right, thank you.
Just wait.
You got it, Paul.
Have you got
it.
a piece of paper?
I mean, yes, I do actually, but it's
Right.
Oh my
okay.
God, paper.
Write down.
Nobody uses paper.
Yes, we do. Right,
I
we got
absolutely
trees.
do.
Right, so 3rd and 4th of August. And we go from there. I'm going to put the email together and send that out as soon as I can with those
Okay.
dates and also links.
All right, perfect. Thank
So
you, Paul.
everybody go to perceptionstoday.com, get on the mailing list, and then you won't miss out on any of the events unless you don't read the email, which is also sometimes the case. Try to be helpful. You know what goes on.
Well, I know
And,
that the YouTube thing works really good because I listened to it the other night. So
excellent. That's good. I mean, we're having great success with that and people are actually getting involved with it. So where it takes me a while to actually edit the podcasts and put them up, if we stream them now, I can get them out quickly. And then when I actually do the proper one, I can either edit the actual video on this one or just put it away to one side. But I think a lot of people are taking the content from both locations. I mean, myself, I prefer listening to audio podcasts so I can actually do other things, but some people like to have it through YouTube so they can actually just put it on in the background. And it's always nice to have people come back and tell me what they feel. Obviously, Myron, you like that.
yeah. Very cool.
Excellent. So I have to say, thank you very much for turning up and spending your time with us. And Ian is going to send some pearls of wisdom your way as well.
I am.
I'm looking for pearls, Ian. Looking for pearls.
Drop those
I'm looking
hard-hitting
for
facts.
pearls as well.
Give me pearls. I need pearls.
Oh man.
Yeah,
me
don't
5
start off with
Maybe we'll hear that
Anyway.
dog that we heard at the very beginning.
Yeah, I got to
Diamonds
find
are-
that and take it out as a
diamonds are
clip
girls' best
because
friend, guys. Sorry.
we never where they came from.
That was
It's just-
metaphysical.
Yeah, very
That
on
seemed
top of it
pretty
all.
weird. We
Okay.
did get to hear Ticket though. That was nice.
Sorry, Ian, you kind of went in and out on the audio. What did you say?
Sorry, I was just saying we did get to hear Myron's cat though, so that was cool.
Oh yeah, it's always good to hear.
Oh, yeah. And he gave
We
up.
like participation.
Yeah, he gave up.
Excellent. Right. So thank you very much once again. And obviously we will catch up, and obviously you can catch us on all the different social media platforms. Twitter is the main one. Instagram is also good. YouTube's good if you want to just get in there and help us out and put a comment, and also hit a few like buttons, because that way, once these content of the deep information gets out to other people who are questioning and looking and searching, they will come, we can talk to them, they will be able to educate us, and we might be able to provide them with some information. So it'd be good all round.
Cool. Yeah, definitely.
Because this is going out on YouTube, Fred, what do you think about the actual concept? I will go around people so it's now locked in and people will be able to hear this.
Wait, what was that?
I was going to get you to do a quick promo of why you like the Perceptions Today community, but when you go, oh, what was that? It kind of drops it flat at that point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's just a good comedy point.
Question.
I was going to say, as I'm closing up, you could just say what you think genuinely about the idea of what we do as Perceptions Today. And I was going to go around everybody and just load it into the YouTube video so that when people get to the end, they can hear people going, either they like it, don't like it, or this is their favorite part of it. But you kind of...
I definitely dropped the ball. I'm going to just like bow out now.
Yeah, just shut the door and run away without actually responding. Thank you. I've decided not to bother now. I'm not going to ask anybody else now. I'm just going to shut the room. That's it.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah. Right. So, Ian, thank you very much for turning up and being a co-host. I would like to say thank you to 33, who's really had his hand up for a long time now.
Yeah, I think I think he left.
Well, I think the technical difficulties that plagued us this morning are plaguing him now, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's nice to see you spiral again for the second session and the first. Mike,
Hey,
it's
I love it. Thanks.
He's just got a heart
no problem.
from him.
33. You can
So
hear us.
he's still alive.
Excellent. That's good. Is it you just can't talk?
Yeah, I can
No,
talk.
you can. Have you heard us asking you to talk?
Hi. Can you hear me?
33. Yeah, we can hear you 33. We've asked you to talk multiple times when you've had your hand up, but we've had no response. So we thought you'd left the building. Yeah, Spiral.
Good night,
I really
Paul.
am
Love you,
feeling
buddy.
that he's having difficulties.
I believe he is as well. Listen, I think it was a great session. The reason I'm going to say
Thank
the
you.
names, even though I said you were going to do it, but the reason I love coming to these little chats you put on is because I get reminded of experiences I've had in the past, and I feel like I'm among kinship. So thank you very much.
Excellent.
Absolutely great.
I'm now going to say, get on the mailing list and you'll know about all the events that come out, which would be great. I'm going to have to plug that really hard and go, every
Yeah, you
conversation,
do.
just slip it in. Because
Absolutely.
a lot of people always ask me, when's the next one? And then I say, well, here's a mailing list. And they never get on the mailing list.
All right. They never check it.
Well, I make it short and sweet. It's like, this is the date, dun, 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 and that's it. Never
It
any
could go
kind
into
of...
spam too. Just I
True.
noticed, Paul, that mine goes into spam and then I pull it back into primary. So just you may want to alert people to that.
Yeah, yeah. Also, check your spam. Some people get it okay, some don't. And
Oh,
also,
that's
if you do
true.
check your spam, you
Yeah.
might find something funny in there as well, but not from me.
If you hear a dog, then you'll know that dog existed.
Oh, definitely. Classic ones. Anyway, I'm going to close this one down. As I said before, I really appreciate everyone coming and just talking to us and sharing and listening in Twitter Space and YouTube and on the podcasts. It's just fantastic the way that we're getting close to our year anniversary, September the 8th.
Wow, that's great.
So much has been said in so much time, and all of it's been fantastic.
Absolutely, it's great.
Yeah.
All right,
Ian,
Ian, see you later.
Yep,
Yeah,
you can
thank
close it
you,
down,
everyone.
Ian. Take it away.
See y'all.
Okay, in 5, 4, 3,
3,
2,
2,
1.
1.
Bye.
Leave.
Take
Thank
care.
you so
Bye.
much.
No problem. Bye.